In today's episode. Well, okay, if you're really sure. Supervisor demands I do something very specific, then gets upset when I do. Won't let me graduate college on time? So let's get started. Well, okay, if you're really sure. In the mid-1980s, I worked at one of the two largest aluminum companies in the US as a machine automation programmer. I was sent to work on a set of machines in a factory in Alabama. This factory took in raw materials and produced gigantic rolls of sheet aluminum in a wide variety of alloys. This particular factory was an early adopter of the continuous draw electrical smelting method. If you haven't seen this in action, it's worth seeing, as it's amazing. Basically, there's this smelting furnace in the floor running a bazillion kilowatts of furnace heating, and the smelting draw machine very slowly pulls up the ingot from the smelter. The raw ingots were rectangular in cross-section and weighed about 30,000 pounds each, 13.500 kilograms, when fully drawn from the furnace. These ingots were drawn from the furnace with this gigantic claw device, and they were very slowly transported from the furnace area to the stacking area over the course of a few hours. In the stacking area, there was this massive cradle thing that accepted the ingot in a vertical alignment and then very slowly rotated it over to a horizontal alignment. All of this was done very slowly. The factory is a union shop, with lots of trades represented. I was considered management because I was not a part of any union, and there were a lot of restrictions placed on me in the factory. I come from a union family, so I generally respected the restrictions that made sense and put up with the ones that didn't. My job was to work on the control software that was very slowly being phased in to replace the completely manual system of ingot and roll transport inside the factory. The union guys were all in favor of an automated system, as ingot handling and roll handling were considered to be dangerous jobs. Our story begins one day when the ingot claw machine breaks down. There are about 6 or 7 of these claws on a long oval track, and you can't transport the ingots if the claw machine won't bite into the ingot coming up from the smelter. The entire production line in the factory goes offline when this machine goes down. The machinists take a look and tell the bosses that the line will be down for about 12 hours while they investigate the failure in the control board manual relays. I'm sitting in the factory office, which looks down over the smelting floor, having a cup of coffee. I overhear a couple of the middle management types discussing how to get the line operating again. One of them, who I will call Idiot 1, suggests that they could use a wire cable sling like you use on a log to lift the ingot from one location to another. Idiot 1 and Idiot 2 discuss the merits of this for a while, and then head down to the shop floor to implement this idea of incredible brilliance. Down on the shop floor, a screaming match ensues between the union guys and management. The guys working on the smelter all drop tools and walk off the site, having filed a dispute with their steward. Idiot 1 and Idiot 2 then proceed to head over to the claw machine operator and tell him to rig up a cable hoist to move the ingots that are standing in the smelters. As the story goes from a conversation over beer later on with the claw machine operator. CMO, claw machine operator, no, lifting these 30,000-pound ingots on a steel hoop is a bad idea. Idiot 1, well, we're telling you to do it. CMO, okay, well, this is not going to turn out like you think. Idiot 2, look. I'm a goddamned college graduate in mechanical engineering, and I'm a senior manager here, and I'm telling you this will be fine. CMO, okay, well, the cable is going to pull off of the hot aluminum and drop the ingot. Idiot 2, no. The coefficient of friction is high enough that it will not drop. Idiot 1, just F*King do what we're telling you, or you can just quit. CMO, okay, let me get my shop steward over here to hear all this, and I'll do it. Then the shop steward comes over, hears the conversation, and gives the CMO a long look. Steward, okay, let me clear the shop floor out and we'll move one ingot. The entire shop floor is cleared of personnel, and the CMO does as he's told. One of the riggers sets up a steel cable hoist, and they snag it around an ingot. They put a little tension on it, and fire off the siren to indicate that there's an ingot moving. They get the ingot up in the air, and slowly moving out of the smelter. The cable bites deeply into the ingot and seems to hold. Then, someone notices that the cable seems to be cutting more and more deeply into the ingot. It begins peeling a huge shaving off one side, exactly like a knife peeling a curl off of a stick of butter. Then, of course, the ingot sways dangerously, the CMO stops the machine, and the ingot falls. 30,000 pounds of hot aluminum smashes into the concrete floor and topples over. The CMO turns to the completely white-faced idiot too and says, "That coefficient of friction you mentioned. That was for hot aluminum, right? Fallout. Company has to pay out and deal with a grievance from both the foundry/smelter guys and the CMO. Idiot 1 is demoted and assigned to a role in the accounting unit. Idiot 2 is reassigned out of a factory role completely and sent to work reviewing technical documents, his dream of being a factory manager gone forever. And it takes almost a week to clean up and fix the shop floor before normal production can resume." Small insert. The ingots are transported inches above the floor, not way up in the air, so even though it dropped on the shop floor, it did so from a few inches. What caused the most damage, and probably the loudest sound I've ever heard, was when it toppled over and smacked down horizontally. Supervisor demands I do something very specific, then gets upset when I do. So, this story takes a little bit of background to make sense. I work as a paramedic in a tiered EMS system where ALS, Advanced Life Support, paramedics, is separate from BLS, Basic Life Support, EMTs, ambulances, and response is in non-transport chase vehicles. We have multiple platoons, each with an alphabetical designation, A, B, C, etc. During a shift, each medic unit is supposed to use their call signs followed by their platoon identifier, as in Medic 1A, Medic 1B, etc. This is really only important around shift change when you might have two medic units of any given number in service at the same time due to late calls, etc. Additionally, we have two paramedics assigned to every unit. When we transport a non-critical patient, usually only one paramedic treats the patient, and the other one goes to the hospital in the medic truck, but becomes available as a single medic responder, identified via their assigned number, such as Paramedic 123, which is unique and is never used by anyone else, even on another shift. This incident happened to me several years ago, when I was still fairly new and had only been at the agency for a few years. I was working a ton of overtime at the time, averaging over 80 hours per week, and I was also a relief person on my platoon, which meant that I was a fill-in for callouts or people on vacation, so I was constantly working different units. This meant that I was also constantly forgetting which unit or shift I was on, and would often get it wrong, i.e. working Medic 1A but say Medic 1D on the radio. And often, I would have to pause to make sure I got the unit number right as well, so my transmission might go something like Medic, pause while my brain tries to catch up, 1, pause again, A arrival. Hence, I would often just use the numeric identifier and leave off the alphabetic 1 since I tripped up over it or got it wrong a lot of the time. This caused some frustration for a new supervisor who was assigned to our shift, and for some reason seemed to really not like me. The supervision was making a big push to have people use the alphabetic identifier on their transmissions, and he took it next level. One day, we're out running our butts off, and I get a message from him in all capital letters: "You must use your platoon identifier on all radio transmissions." So, on our next call, my partner takes a patient to the hospital, and I went Paramedic 123, be available. Once I arrived at the ER, the other crews were all had a good laugh, and then told me I had to call the supervisor's phone. He yelled at me to meet him at the fueling station, so after transferring patient care and restocking, we headed over there. We pull up to the fuel pumps, and my partner starts fueling the truck while I start walking across the parking lot to his truck. He jumps out and hurls a wad of trash at me before going on a rant about me being a smart ass on the radio, etc., etc. He's carrying on like the third monkey on the gangplank to Noah's Ark and going on about only using the alphabetic identifier when I'm transmitting my full unit number, not my single responder number, and things like don't make a pause between your unit number and your letter, because it sounds like you're being disrespectful, etc., etc. I wait until I can get a word in edgewise and then explain the situation of my OT in changing units every day, and his response was just, well, get it right the first time. So I asked if I should correct it if I make a mistake, and he responded with the same statement. He then jumped in his truck and left. I turned around and headed back to our truck, after I picked up his trash and discarded it properly, to find my partner doubled over laughing. He says, "You're the only person I know who can ruin a supervisor's whole day with one letter of the alphabet, and do it with class." We've had a lot of laughs about it since then. And just for fairness' sake, the supervisor did actually get a lot better and became a pretty decent guy. We got along well by the time he was transferred to another platoon a few years later. Won't let me graduate college on time? This happened 7 years ago. Senior year, I realized I could add an anthropology minor to my degree and still graduate in time. I scheduled the appropriate classes to meet this new goal, but a class I needed was canceled at the last minute because of low interest, so I signed up for a bunch of blow-off classes because all I needed were electives for my major. I go through the semester, and every once in a while I get emails about not being scheduled to correctly graduate and that the deadline has already passed to meet these requirements. I replied to these advisors saying I decided not to get my minor and should still be good to go. Eventually, I decide to call and talk to them. Turns out I needed upper-level electives, so my Anth 101 and Basket Weaving for Idiots 102 did not count for that requirement. I go in to talk to an advisor and talk to them. I ended up getting the assistant dean for this meeting. I asked them why they didn't notify me of the graduation issue sooner, before the deadline to add/drop classes. They said that they aren't notified of canceled classes until much later. I asked if I could take some online classes very quickly and graduate on time. She said I could take online classes to fulfill the requirement, but that they have a policy where you cannot graduate the same semester that you take online classes because the grades might not come in on time. I asked them if I can appeal this policy. They said I could, but that I signed this paperwork saying any schedule change must be approved by the dean of my college during my final meeting with my advisor before the last semester, so it was unlikely to be granted. So you're saying that the only thing keeping me from winning an appeal of this policy is this paperwork I signed? Cool. I signed up for 2 senior-level reading and essay-intensive history classes. You are allowed to do a maximum of 3 weeks' worth of work per week for online classes at this university. I had 9 weeks before the end of the semester, and the shortest window to complete these classes is 6. I wrote an average of 64 pages of essays a week for 6 weeks straight to get done in the 6 weeks. Grades got posted about 1 week before the end of the semester. Cue the MC, I write my appeal of the policy. I attach a copy of my signed paperwork that says any schedule change must be approved by a dean of my college. I also point out how assistant dean tells me that they aren't notified of canceled classes. How could this canceled class that initially made me not scheduled correctly to graduate be removed from my schedule without my dean's approval? You, the college, violated this agreement that you had me sign. 1 week later, I was presented with my hand-labeled diploma that was not kept in the alphabetical and printed labeled diplomas of the other graduating students. I squeezed through so late that they couldn't even print a label for the envelope. Always read the wording of the things you sign when trying to get out of them. This agreement simply stated a schedule change, not a schedule change made by me. Thanks for watching.